Hello, everyone. Welcome to another 11 Warriors film study. I'm Kyle Jones here. Today, we're going to talk about Ohio State's dominant 70-0 victory last weekend in the shoe against Grambling State. The Battle of the Bands was a little bit closer than the battle on the football field. Ohio State starters only playing one half, at least on offense. The starters on defense only getting one snap, which we'll talk about here in just a second. So you want to know, what can we take away from such a game? Well, actually, for me personally, I was looking at what could we see from the new Buckeye defense under Matt Patricia. You wondered what exactly they were going to do as their sequel to the great Texas performance. How is that defense going to actually find its level? What does home look like? What does the base defense look like? And I think we have a few more answers based off of what we showed and what we'll get into later today. And a lot of that has to do with disguising coverage, has to do with pressure, putting Grambling in a tough spot on the road already, but dealing with a lot of different movement, post-snap, disguising where they're bringing pressure from. So tough day for the visitors, and just telling us a little bit more about what we can expect from Matt Patricia and his play calls moving forward. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, again, a dominant victory, huge in the stat sheet. The starters only playing one half of football, but there are some things that I think we can clean up a little bit if we're talking about some of the execution with this young offense. We'll get into a couple of those examples here, but also what we saw was some great game planning. Even though it was Grambling, Ohio State still putting in some interesting game plans, putting some things together on film, probably for opposing defenses to have to account for later in the season. So let's take a look and let's get into it. So we're starting off here looking at Caden McDonald. He's obviously the player highlighted, but if you look at the formation, this is Ohio State's base 4-2 over. We saw this a lot in the first two games. I think we can start to say this is home for this defense with Matt Patricia. And the over is to the field typically. So again, that three technique there, Edric Houston to the left of McDonald, who's highlighted, he's going to be to the wide side. But McDonald's who we want to highlight on this play, because look at the speed with which he's able to just beat this center. He's going to cross the face of the center right at the snap. He's got it well timed up. This is early in the third quarter, and it's what leads to the touchdown. Just gets right around this guy and then gets that big paw right on the football. I mean, this guy's been very consistent so far this season for Ohio State, probably the most consistent player on that front four or three, depending on what the alignment is, but just been a huge help to this defense, really been an anchor thus far this season. This, of course, was his last snap because, we know the ball comes out. Riley Pettijohn's right there to pick it up, take it in the end zone for 6. This was the end of the day for the starters on defense. But again, just a great effort. Let's watch it one more time. You can see the speed here. Boom, right across the face, hand on the football, ball's out. Great effort for McDonald here. Just one of many so far this season. Okay, so we begin by showing this 4-2 over alignment once again. Again, over towards the field. You can see that 3 technique is towards the middle. That Buckeye leaf over to the right side kind of signifies that. But we're going to highlight Styles here because his movement pre-snap is really the key on this play. Now you can follow him down. He's going to end up really close to the line of scrimmage, right, as like a outside linebacker, essentially the other defensive end. Now we saw Arvell Reese in this role a lot against Texas. They changed it up. They had Styles bump down this time, and they were able to leave the middle linebacker, in this case Riley Pettijohn, alone. Now they're playing a penny front because there's just one guy in the backfield, right? You've got that bare front from the 3 down linemen. You've got your nose tackle right over the center. You've got 2 down linemen in the B gaps, right, between the guards and the tackles. And then you've got these stand-up ends. So it's familiar from like a 3-4 defense. Now what the key that does is it really is going to free up Pettijohn here. He is the key on this play. He's the free hitter. And what we mean by that is he's going to be unblocked. He's allowed to mirror the back, right? We're able to see, you can see that all the blockers in front of him are completely occupied. He's got nobody on him. Now the quarterback's reading Styles, so Styles stays home in case the quarterback keeps. But that's just simply because he knows I've got Riley Pettijohn to clean up, which he does really well. Now this is a big reason why you keep seeing this penny look from Ohio State, right? Let's show it one more time. Just look how cleanly and free Pettijohn's kept on this play. No one ever gets towards him. Bam, free to make a tackle. All right, so we can see the defense in yet another 4-2-5 over. This is their base look. We can see over on the right side of the screen, the slot defender is lined up tight to the line. We can see 18 McLean over right there by that Big Ten logo. He's creeping up, so this actually looks, at first glance, like the free, this is cover one. He might have the tight end number 4 right there. And then Downs is going to shift over towards the middle of the field, right? That's what this looks like. They're preparing for this cover one look. But at the snap, we see that McClain bails. We see Downs bailing, of course. So now the quarterback, as he's getting the snap, he's going, what am I looking at here? It's actually a run play. So again, this is all disguised, but this changes the run fits, right? Who is responsible for whom in this situation? You expected McClain to be a part of the run fit. He's now dropping out. So who's taking his place? Well, that is the nickel who is blitzing from the slot. Now the tight end was off, so he should, in theory, this should all be blocked up well. And this is what happens when you play an opponent like Grambling, who's just overmatched, right? 9 here cannot handle CJ Hicks on the inside move. He's expecting Hicks to come from the outside, right? He's the defensive end. Again, you can look at it again from this initial angle, right? You're expecting that Hicks is going to be on the outside shoulder, right? He's coming from the outside of 9. And instead what we get is he's coming on the inside. Now, there's a guard and tackle that are comboing, and you're 76 here, the right tackle is going to try to climb to Styles, but he's not going to get there in time. Meanwhile, that tight end that's coming across in a split zone, he is going to get there and get a piece on Lorenzo Styles. But all the while, CJ Hicks is just coming unblocked, really nowhere for this running back to go. These are those things, those plays that, yes, you want to see great execution, and that's really helpful from an Ohio State team. You're looking for this great execution in these moments against an overmatched team, and a lot of times that's really what we saw from the Buckeye defense. This is just one other example of it. All right, so we can see the defense lined here up on our next clip. They're just playing straight cover one. Now, this is one of the few times where there wasn't a ton of disguise, at least in the coverage. You can see your center fielder, your free safety. Everybody else is manned up across the board. It looks like the Mike linebacker, in this case Styles, is going to have the running back. And then you got 5 players, one of which is Caleb Downs, and you might recognize this play already. He's mugged up against the line. Now, what we're going to see is as the ball is snapped, yes, it's man coverage, but wait, where did this guy come from? How did Caleb Downs end up with the football? What just happened, right? You expected him to be blitzing. As we get to the end zone view, what you can see is, of course, Downs is right there. You can see Styles again. It's a different version of a 5-man front. This time it's a very different personnel. But you can see Downs and in this case, Pettijohn, they're in those B gaps, right? So they've switched the personnel. It's a 3-2-6 dime look, right? But Downs and Pettijohn are actually going to drop. They're going to initially show blitz. They're going to take a step or two forward, which is a thing we're seeing a lot from this defense. We're going to see it in another clip here shortly. But we're actually going to get Styles, and this is a simulated pressure. You don't know which of these 6 guys is going to come, but only 4 of them are actually going to come, right? And so that allows Downs to be the man on the spot. He's able to just drop right back, right? Let's watch it one more time. You can see him kind of take a step forward. 74 is waiting for him. 55 is locked up. And that means Styles is wide open towards the quarterback. Quarterback's got to get rid of the ball. He knows his hot reads this slant. Does not expect number 2 to be standing right there. Great reaction, of course, by Downs. That ball was fired at him. Every reason to celebrate. Okay, so we have some more disguise here from the Ohio State defense. This is a 3rd down play. We can see one deep safety. Now, he's on the hash, but he's the only deep safety. So giving the read that this is a single high look, maybe a cover 3, a cover 1, where he's just sitting in the middle of the field, right? But as soon as the ball is snapped, we see something very different. Now, the defense is going to bail out to a zone coverage. We'll get to that in a second. You can see a bunch of those guys that were crowded up to the line. They're going to blitz and turn into zone droppers. Meanwhile, you can see Matthews on the left side here. He's coming from his spot in the slot. He was lined up over the number 3 receiver. Now, he's coming unblocked. We'll talk about the blocking scheme in a second. But let's watch what this defense turns into. It's a full-on cover 2, right? This is really a Tampa. This is what Ohio State has run a ton the last 2 years. And that's great because they're getting pressure. You can see Matthews running unabated to the quarterback. But bad news, Matthews doesn't make the play, and suddenly you look down, this wide receiver, it was actually set up to be a tunnel screen. Now, there's only 2 lone defenders down there, and there's 3 receivers. Now, this is the risk you take with those type of simulated pressures. The free safety, in this case Styles, has 30 yards to cover and to get there and make a play, but the quarterback never makes the play. He holds on, runs outside, and never gets there. And we're going to show you why in just a second, because as we move it to the end zone view, again, this is the 3-2-6. We got 6 guys all lined up. There's no middle linebacker. You can see McClain. We know he's going to drop. Now, they're going to bail out, right? You know Downs is getting out there. Pierce is getting out there. Jackson is getting out there, and they're zone droppers. And it really looks like, we know of 3 rushers, right? The nose tackle, Curry. Atkinson's coming across the face of the right tackle. We know Matthew's going to be coming off the edge. We can't see him yet. But I want you to look at Styles, the guy who's circled here, because Styles is looking on the outside. He looks like he's getting ready to drop into his zone as well, right? But we saw this in the first game as well. Arvell Reese pulled this move and was able to come up with a sack. In this case, Styles, he just delays. He's faking it. Now the guard has nobody to block, right? He's sitting there going, wait a second. And Styles is going to come through. Now they pass him off, but this is really the key. We just showed this. Why doesn't the quarterback throw the ball? Well, because Caleb Downs, that's why. Because Caleb Downs is standing right there, number 5. And pretty much any other player is going to go, well, I'm standing right by an open receiver. I'm doing my job. I'm getting out here. But Downs, he recognizes the concept so quickly that even though he's blocking off the path to number 5, he's undercut that receiver. So that guy's taken away. He knows I've got to be the guy to get there on this receiver screen. So the quarterback never makes that throw because he can see 2 coming there to cut it off. Then once he's made that up, Downs drops and we've got an incomplete pass. Again, just great work from Downs and the rest of this team. This is the type of stuff that Downs does so well. Just making sure that the quarterback doesn't know doesn't have a place to go with the ball. Just tough for any offense to come back against this. All right, so Ohio State really brought a lot more pressure. Almost 30% of their snaps, they brought pressure of some sort. This is a good example of the way they were able to disguise it. It wasn't always just those guys crowded up at the line. We've seen that in a couple plays here. But in this instance, we're seeing them line up with a 4 deep. This looks like quarters. This looks like a very conservative shell. But as the ball is snapped, you're going to see something a little bit different, right? We're going to see these guys all drop off into man coverage. This is not quarters. This is straight cover 0. There's no free safety in the middle of the field. The only guy standing there is the umpire, right? Quarterback gets the ball. He's got nowhere to go, throws it out. Actually makes a really nice play to know where his hot is, gets it out to the tight end on a dump off. Nice play from the Grambling quarterback here. But this is just a really good example of what we're talking about from some of this deception, right? So again, the guard sees Styles stepping up to blitz. We've got 6 potential rushers. 92 Curry does a good job of chipping the tight end, but 52, that tackle there, he's keeping an eye on Curry because he knows I got him. And the guard sees Styles and goes, well, that's my guy. He's number 2. And he's assuming that center is going to pick up Malone, who's blitzing unabated to the quarterback. Meanwhile, on the other side, Reese is jumping right through that B gap. So there's 6 guys blitzing and 5 blockers, essentially. Except, once again, Styles is playing games. He actually says, I'm going to stop back. I'm going to be the robber here. And that's going to allow Malone to get there unabated. This guard's he's never going to touch anybody on this play, this poor guy. They're playing games with these blockers, playing games with the blocking schemes. They're using them against themselves, the rules that they develop in these situations. So again, Patricia just winning a chess match as if Ohio State didn't already have enough going in their favor. This is just one more example. Okay, moving on to the offense, of course, you can see this is going to be a run play. It's an off-tackle run. Now, Ohio State for years has been a zone team. This really looks to me like a gap scheme that's really meant to hit that off tackle. And the big reason I say that, you're going to get some combination blocks and down blocks from the left side. So Saraveld's going to seal out that outside linebacker there, that stand up. You're going to see Montgomery just block down. We're going to get a nice combination. Tegra Shabola does really well on this play to chip the defense or the nose tackle and then work up to that linebacker we'll highlight. And Phillip Daniels is just driving out this defensive end. Meanwhile, really indifferent look here. Thurman, who played a great game for Ohio State, both blocking and catching. He's actually going to come over the top and crack back on this linebacker to seal him. Now, we're getting this, but the other piece to watch is we're getting Claire coming across as a motion, and he's really a lead blocker. So this is almost an ISO play, like an old school off tackle fullback lead, but the tight end who's coming in motion is really acting as the fullback. Now you're going to see him crash into the end. Not the best technique. You'd love to see him hit more of the defender and less of Phil Daniels. But again, boom, right there. He gets as much of Daniels as he does anybody else. But you can see right above this huge lane that's cleared. Again, Hinsman's gotten on that nose tackle. Shabola's worked up to the linebacker, is clearing him out. Thurman's clearing out the other linebacker. And Peoples does a great job recognizing the only unblocked defender is this safety coming from the outside unblocked. So I'm going to cut it back and get upfield. Again, just a nice new wrinkle. Hard to say who's really responsible or even what we're calling this moving forward. But a nice little new wrinkle in the run game, kind of inspired by some of the stuff we saw Chip Kelly call last year in the playoff. Now, this was a concept. This is a play that got a lot of people excited last Saturday for understandable reasons. It's the Will Kacmarek touchdown pass early in the game. Now, it was a great play. Good to see a guy like that who works so hard be able to catch a long ball, find the end zone. But I would actually guess that the coaches didn't love some of the way that this play, actually ended up going out. And I'm going to show you a little bit why. Now, it's a four verticals set from four verticals concept from a 3-by-1 set, which means they're not just running straight downfield. And that's kind of the key here. In reality, especially with this split safety look, we can already see pre-snap. You want to see Kacmarek kind of bend that across. And really what you want to have is you want to have guys, your outside guys are just outside the numbers, and your two inside guys are really running down the hash marks. And that gives you good spacing to stretch the defense. It's equal across the field. Now, as we can see, it's a play action. The defense is going to drop into cover 2, right? That's a great play to attack when you're running 4 verts. So obviously Ohio State knew what to expect. But what we can see here is these safeties get super wide, right? That's the Jeremiah Smith effect, right? That safety on the bottom of the screen here, he went from the hash mark all the way out to the far sideline. He's so worried about giving up that threat to number 4. There's nobody left in the middle of the field. Meanwhile, the safety at the top of the screen's going, wait a second, I've got 3 verticals here. What am I supposed to do with this? So he does his job, and he splits the outside receiver Tate and Innis running up the seam to his side. That's really the best you can do in this situation. But it's a nice ball thrown over the top. Kacmarek's open, runs into the end zone. Now let's talk a little bit about, one, how this play came about, but also what Ohio State's going to want to do a little bit better next time, right? So what we can see is this middle linebacker, again, this is Tampa 2. He should really be getting depth. Now, the difference about Tampa 2 and any other zone is that this middle linebacker position, this used to be Brian Urlacher and the Bears 15 years ago. He's going to be a hybrid between a safety and a linebacker. So it really becomes a mix between a true 2-deep and a 3-deep, because he's really supposed to take away these seam runners. They call him the pole runner, right? Because he's running right up the flagpole. But this guy kind of hesitates. He's not getting enough depth. He sees the play action. He's not sure, wait, do I need to be in my run fit? Should I drop into my coverage? It's really putting him in conflict. And that allows Kacmarek, who is probably not going to break any records in the 40 this year at the combine, to be able to run right by him because of this hesitation, right? Great ball. But now here's the problem. Look how close Kacmarek and Innis are. They're both standing right in between the hash marks. They're only a few yards apart. Now, ideally, you'd want Innis to stay right on that hash and to line, just run right up that piece there, or the hash mark there, and then you'd want Kacmarek bending over the top. Now, I understand Kacmarek knows he's just in a straight up foot race, and if he bends it, over to the opposite hash mark, that's going to run right into that defender. He knows he can outrun him. He wants to take his chance. But against better teams, when they're going to have linebackers that can, one, run with Will Kacmarek, but aren't going to get so caught up in those run threats, they're going to play their responsibilities much more sound. Kacmarek's got to make sure to get across to that other hash mark, because actually in this case, the player who would be wide open is Innis, and Innis has got to stay in the right spot. So good for Kacmarek to catch this ball, but it's really not what you want to see from an executional standpoint. Okay, now let's get some more fun. This is probably the most interesting part of the day that I saw from the Ohio State offense, and it was the way that they used this motion, this wide receiver orbit motion. They go behind the shotgun quarterback and running back instead of in front of it like a jet motion. That's the difference. It's that more rounded path. The way that they package this into a series of play calls throughout the game, we're going to show that for our final few clips today. Now, what we can see here, Innis in the slot, it's the same. We've got two receivers to the left. The back and the tight end are the opposite side, and they're going to be lead blockers, and we're going to get a great crackback block from Carnell Tate. Now, he's going to come down on this safety. C.J. Donaldson in the back does a good job, gets around. Nice work there. The defense was playing a little bit off, so they gave him a nice, a chance to get upfield. Again, good example here. Kacmarek has nobody to block because the defense is playing so soft. He's just working upfield, and eventually that just allows, in this case, Innis, he's got plenty of room before he even gets touched. I don't think anyone touches him until he's past the first down marker, and that's going to set up what we see here moving forward. Again, look at how deep the defense is. We're going to get this end around coming around, no one touching him, no one even getting close to him until he crosses that first down marker. So we're going to get another orbit motion here. It's the same look. They're going the different direction, but once again, you can see two receivers to the boundary here, to the short side of the field, coming in that orbit motion. You've got the tailback and the tight end to the opposite side. So this looks just like that orbit motion we just showed, right? Now, this time it's actually Bo Jackson who's in the backfield. But what we're going to see is as he takes that handoff, the secondary is going to rotate around, right? They're going to try to accommodate for this motion. So the safeties that were deep are going to rotate around. But it's not actually a handoff in this case, right? What do we know this is? Well, this is a deep ball to Carnell Tate. And the defense is actually finally, they do a decent job of dropping into this 3 deep, 4 under cover 3. Now, the concept here is really a high-low. And so you've got a post going deep. This is, there's really only 3 receivers, and one of them is Jackson as the release. He just faked the handoff. Otherwise, we've got 6-man protection. There's really only 2 receivers. So he's looking, Julian saying, is at Carnell Tate and going, wait a second, there's no free safety. Why is there no free safety? He is completely out of position against this post route, which allows him to just lay it in right over the middle of the field. Huge gain for Ohio State that ultimately would set up one of many scores on the day. But as we can see from the end zone view, we get Jackson going in motion again. Now there's that free. This is the guy who rotated over, right? Again, they had to rotate their zone responsibilities on the fly because of this motion, and they're communicating late. Now, this safety, as he rotates, he is locked onto Jackson to wonder, like, wait, does this guy have the ball? Does he have the ball? He's keeping an eye on him. He goes, wait, oh, now I got to get back in zone coverage. And it's not until the ball's in the air that he realizes, oh, shoot, I'm completely out of position. Now, the ball's great catch from Tate. Not the most accurate ball we've seen from Zayn all day. But, again, a great effort. We can see, again, this safety who's completely lost, just hoping, please, somebody don't catch this ball. That's not what happens. Big first down, Ohio State. All right, so we've got one more play to show here. It's the third in this sequence. We've got this motion again from Ennis. Again, you can see it's the same formation. 2 receivers into the boundaries. Now it's just flipped. Tailback and tight end to the opposite side. And we can see Ennis this time again. He's going to that orbit motion. We fake the handoff. Look at, once again, the secondary is rotating over. They've got to accommodate for this. We want to get a guy down there unblocked just in case it's a handoff once again. But everybody else has to rotate as well. But it's actually a handoff to Donaldson, who goes 30 yards before he gets touched, wide open. Now let's talk about why he was so wide open. Obviously, the motion helped, but there's so much more than you can even imagine. Now, it's great play design. As we see Ennis come in motion, I want you to watch the offensive line because this is a classic counter scheme. Now, you can see really clearly how this happens. You've got the front side here, in this case, Daniels, Shabola, the center, Hinsman. They're all going to block down and seal everybody inside. The left tackle, Saravold's going to do the same thing. And then we're going to get the left guard, or the backside guard, Montgomery, and the tight end are going to pull around and lead. But watch how much the secondary, or this motion, draws the eyes of the secondary and the middle linebacker, 6. You're hoping this guy is actually going to be going the other way. He should be reading this backfield motion, hopefully, not just from the receiver, but seeing this pulling guard, the pulling tight end, the running back, and he should be going the opposite way. And as Thurman pulls around, there's nobody for him to block. 6 is standing there by himself, the opposite side of the field. This is what happens when you play an overmatched opponent. They're just not prepared to handle the speed, everything. You're giving them so much to look at. They're already worried about just you lining up and running at them straight ahead. But when you add all this eye candy, that's what you're going to get plays like this, right? And I think that's really the story of this game. Grambling, put up a good effort, but really never had a chance both schematically and physically. But what you hope for is this kind of execution. This is really solid execution from Ohio State in the run game. Again, good blocking on the outside from Smith. Huge gain.